Hello, my name is Jelena Jerinic, and I come from the University Law School in Belgrade, Serbia. I participate in the Cost Action European Family Support Network. And in January 2020, I had a great opportunity to perform a short-term scientific mission at the University of Galway in Ireland. My mission was conducted at the National University of Ireland in Galway, specifically at the UNESCO Child and Family Research Centre, for which I had to say is probably one of the best places in Europe where you can do such research. The mission itself was conducted during second part of January, and it lasted for 2 working weeks. So in this, let's say, relatively short period, I conducted a desk-based review of legal literature, but also literature in different other fields like social policy, social work, etc., which related to institutional structures of family support services across Europe. First of all, I have to say that I have to thank the colleagues from the UNESCO Child and Family Research Center for welcoming me and my colleague Jelena, who also conducted her STSM during the same period at the research center. The hospitality that we received and also the resources which were at our disposal made these 2 weeks that we spent in Galway, let's say, a period for remembering. So we had plenty of opportunity to discuss different issues, to plan future cooperation, future research, joint articles relating to this specific project. And let's say for these 2 weeks, we really felt like at home. So thank you once again to all of our colleagues. A big thank you for all of the colleagues at the UNESCO Child and Family Research Center. It's really a wonderful place to be and to do research. So my STSM was titled National Structures of Family Support Across Europe. I am a lawyer by training and a legal professor by profession. So the topics that I focus are primarily in the legal field. But as I said, this opportunity and the resources provided in Galway gave me a completely different aspect, from a multidisciplinary aspect, which I was not able to achieve only studying legal literature at my home university. So the main topic and aims of my STSM were to outline, if possible, the main models of types of national legislative approaches towards institutionalization of family support in European countries which are participating in this cost action, and to answer, if possible, what kind of institutional structures do European states establish in order to provide family support, and also how do they distribute competencies among these structures, because as you will see, these structures are usually not simple or consist of different institutions and different actors, among which different parts of competences relating to family support are distributed. Finally, it was my aim to identify the main courses of reform in European countries in the last decade, and to identify what are the common characteristics to all these countries, or the majority of these countries, if such can be identified. The aims of the STSM are closely related to the work done by one of the working groups within this cost action, which is actually preparing a scoping study of family support services across Europe. These are the main research questions which I posed in the proposal for my STSM. And as I said, they relate to different models of institutional setup across Europe. Then the second question relates to major courses of reform during the last decade in European countries. And finally, is it possible to discern some features which relate to institutional setup of family support services, which would be common to all European countries? And if yes, what are these features? In terms of preliminary findings of my STSM, because I have collected, let's say, so much sources and so much literature that there are lots of topics that can be covered. In terms of legal framework in general, this is covered both by international instruments, which are ratified by most European countries or all European countries. Then there is some reference to family, always in national constitutions, not so often to family support, but some conclusions can be drawn from that as well. And finally, there are like, let's say, probably tens of pieces of legislation in each of these countries in different fields, because family policy is always a part of wider policy. So it's a multidisciplinary issue, and it usually is not covered by one specific systemic law. When it comes to implementing institutions, what I have found is that in most European countries, what we can recognize as let's say, a common trend is the so-called subsidiarization. This is a phenomenon which was recognized in literature is having two parts. One of the parts is territorial reorganization. So mostly in most countries, these services are decentralized or deconcentrated. And the other aspect concerns to multiplication of these actors. So they appear both on the central, local, regional, provincial level, but also they come from different sectors. So these institutions and these actors are not only state institutions or public institutions, but they come also from the private sector and usually also from the voluntary sector. All these actors perform different tasks or different parts of tasks. So some of them are related to policy formulation, others to implementation, and also another group for monitoring and oversight. Sometimes even these tasks are divided into different segments, and different actors also implemented in parallel or together. However, this doesn't mean that all European countries have the same organization, or that the same organization brings the same results or effects, because when filtered through different regulatory frameworks, which are usually the result and are the result of different, let's say, conditions within a country, within a society, they can bring completely diverging effects. In terms of effects, these structures or these systems can bring, in legal terms, there are two main concerns which I have identified. The first one is the obvious need for policy coordination, so both vertical and horizontal coordination, because when you have many actors within one field, you have to have coordination both from between the center and decentralized actors, but also on the same level of government. For example, at the central level, we have different ministries or different departments which basically deal with different aspects of family support. And the other concern is related to equity, because when services are decentralized, for example, within a territory of a country, this is also influenced, for example, by the level of development of these parts of the country. So we can also speak about discrimination or inequity between, let's say, users of these services provided by decentralized actors. Finally, if we want to identify models of institutional setup, we can basically use two, let's say, types or groups of criteria. So one would concern the level of decentralization or centralization, which can also be viewed as part of wider processes of centralization and decentralization in some countries, European countries, which are usually happen in circular phases. And the other criteria for classification concerns the variety of actors and their specific roles, as I have briefly presented already. Besides these preliminary findings, I have to say that both researching the literature, but also talking to my colleagues from Ireland and my colleague from Serbia during these 2 weeks of, I have to say, really intensive work and research, I have to say that each of these preliminary findings sparked ideas of separate topics for separate further research, and I have listed only some of them here. So these are actually some ideas for future research that I can conduct either on my own or together with other colleagues. So is there, for example, place for some kind of supranational standards which would relate to institutional setup of provision of family support services? Are they necessary? Is it possible to introduce them? And what effects could we expect from such standards? Also, talking to my colleagues, we concluded that there are similarities between countries. Usually, they often happen in, let's say, regional circumstances. So we could, besides presenting our national reports in our individual countries, we could also think about comparing different groups of countries and providing regional studies. I already said that coordination is a big concern in this field, and when it comes to the legal field, there are issues which could be explored further in terms of legal obligation and also practice and case law when it comes to coordination between different institutions, as well as oversight when these competences are delegated outside of the public sphere, outside of the public sector, or decentralized to different levels of government. My specific field of interest is actually this decentralization and local government. So finally, I would very much like to be further involved in possibly in research which would concern decentralization of family support on one hand and equity on the other hand. So after these, let's say, brief findings of my research during the STSM, for which hopefully some of them will be presented in the forms of published articles in the near future. I have to say that this was a really enriching experience for me, and the STSM that was provided within this course project actually enabled me to conduct a research which I probably wouldn't be able to do at my home university, both in terms of resources, but also work obligations that we all have in teaching and different other tasks that we perform in our everyday work. So even though the time that I have spent in Galway was limited, I have to say that from this point of view, I think that I wouldn't be able to explore so much and to reach these results if I was at my home university, probably for a much longer period of time. So I have to say that the STSMs are really a unique opportunity for researchers to step out of their everyday routines and really to dedicate time to a specific issue. So I would definitely recommend applying for STSM, especially to younger colleagues. That's all for me. If you have any questions, you can find my contact details on the Eurofem website, along with other colleagues which are involved. Thank you.